Hey, Ecom Masters, welcome to the show. My name is Mike Weiss, Chief Community Officer at Dropified, and as a thank you for tuning in to the e-commerce mastery show, we've put together a special podcast-only e-commerce training just for you. Now, in it, you're going to learn the ins and outs of how to set up your own brand of products where you can literally put your own labels, brands, logos, and messaging over top of top-selling, in-demand, high-quality, high-profit products that are exclusive to supplements, CBD, skincare, and pet products. And here's the key: no minimum order quantities, no upfront inventory costs. And I'm going to show you how to do this in literally minutes. Now, guys, we refined these principles over the course of 5 years with working with over 100,000 of our own e-compreneur customers just like you. So to get immediate 100% free access, all you got to do is go to dropified.com/podcast-special, or you can just click the link below and you're going to learn exactly how we do this in just minutes. Thank you so much for being part of the Dropified family and enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone. E-commerce mastery. I'm Mike Weiss. I'm a Chief Community Officer here and your host, and I'm super excited to be chatting with Peter Taunton today. Peter Taunton is the founder of, honestly, I feel like you're the founder of everything right now when I was going through everything, but founder of Snap Fitness, and he has just been recognized so many times in the Inc. 5000 Entrepreneur 500. He was Entrepreneur of the Year in 2010 by Ernst and Young, and yeah, it's just been incredible to see this amazing story come to fruition, and you have an incredible story, and I can't wait to dive into it. But Peter, thank you so much for being part of our show today. It really is quite an honor.
No, you know what? It's my pleasure, Mike. I've looked forward to this, and I'm glad we're able to get it on the books, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. You know what, Peter, before we dive in, I just want to give folks, a bit of a understanding of maybe what they can expect today. So guys, what we normally like doing on these shows is, first and foremost, we want to get to know our guest, what their story is. Next, the point of a story is not just, hearing the beginning and the end, but also figuring out what was kind of behind the scenes that maybe people don't get to read about when they're reading about you, or they don't normally get to see. What was the train of thought? What were some key steps that you took? And so we're going to dive in a little bit beneath the skin and get some secret nuggets that Peter doesn't normally share with everyone. So this is going to be super valuable for all of our listeners. And then Peter, I'd love it if at the end of this, what we always do is, what we usually do is we have kind of, what's the one lever that people can pull today? They don't have to have millions of dollars to get started. They don't have to have everything lined up to pull this lever. What's something that they can actually pull today, and in order to get started with these, core foundational pillars that we're going to be talking about, that helped you kind of get from where you were to where you are right now. And then, yeah, we'll take it from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'm all yours.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, Peter, we would love, I know your story, but a lot of people maybe listening haven't heard maybe the full story. So why don't you take us through, how did you get started with Snap Fitness?
It started, honestly, I had an opportunity. I went to work. Let me just take you back for a moment as a child. And you and I had a chance to speak a little bit before we started this, but I was the youngest of 7 kids, and I grew up middle class in a small rural community in the Midwest, and just a typical upbringing. And the one benefit or bonus I had was my father owned a small grocery store in our hometown, and that was the basis. When I was 8 years old, my dad gave me the opportunity to sell popcorn in front of his grocery store, just like my brothers and sisters had done before me. So there was not. My dad was kind of a man's man in his thought process. He said, "Hey, son, you're gonna do one of 3 things. You're either gonna play sports, be in school, or working for me." So he kept us busy. And at the time, I thought, "Wow, that's kind of harsh as an 8-year-old." But as I sit and reflect on it today, that was a pretty good strategy for managing and focusing me. So that's where I got into business for the first time. My real opportunity came when I was about 22 years old. I got a call from some owners of a health club that happened to be in my hometown. And it was a club a racquetball club that I literally spent the previous 7 years at every day. I was at that club 5 to 6 days a week playing racquetball. And so I had a chance to see the ins and outs of that business, how the management ran the business. And I became friends with the owners, and at any rate, I knew that the club was struggling. So at one point I was going to move to Orlando, Florida, and pick up racquetball. I was a professional player.
Yeah.
And I was going to play the Sun Belt area. And before I moved to Florida, I had breakfast with a couple of the owners. And I just said to the guys, look, I don't feel like in my right mind I can leave for Florida without at least sharing with you my perspective of why your business is failing. I'm 22 years old.
And, how old were they, if I don't mind asking?
Yeah, they're in their 50s.
Wow. So 22-year-old kid is trying to tell these 50-year-olds what's wrong with your business. That's incredible.
And I gave it, but the stuff to me, it was really black and white. And black and white being that I think just like today, back then it was no different. When people walk into your business, number one, they want to feel appreciated and respected. Okay. So you got to greet the people when they come in. You got to thank them when they leave. The club was filthy. I said, you guys, it needs a deep cleaning. And then you've got to get involved in the community. This manager that they had, he was a former athlete, but he wasn't a business person. He wasn't a people person. And you're in the people customer service business in the health club space. So, to make a long story short, I told those guys, he's not your guy. If you guys ever want to make this thing profitable, you've got to change your leadership within the club. That's where I would start. And I said, I wish you guys the best. I literally from there, I hopped in my car and I drove to Orlando, Florida with my twin brother. And about a year and a half later, my phone rings and it's these owners. And they said, Peter, we'd like you to come back and try to turn this club around for us. And they paid me, and they said, here's our deal. We'll pay you $16,000 a year, but we'll give you an opportunity to buy us out if the business is profitable. So to make a long story short, Mike, I came in, I made some drastic changes. Over the course of the next 7-8 years, I ended up having enough equity in the business to where I bought everyone out.
Wow.
That was kind of my launch pad. And from there, I was fearless because I came into the business with nothing. So as soon as I got the debt half retired, I went back to the bank. I got a loan.
Wow.
And I built another club. And now I had 2 clubs playing off one loan. And I did that for the next 20 years. And I had ended up having about 7 big full service clubs. And I'm, it was such a great time of my life because I literally spent 20 years of my life in a space that I loved. And I often talk about that, Mike, of if you're gonna, work is work, right?
Yeah.
So and we spend so much of our time doing it. It's so important that you try to find something that you can be passionate about because especially getting into business, it's one thing if you're getting up and working for the man every day. I mean, that's its own grind. But when you're working for yourself and sometimes you're working for nothing or for peanuts, you got to at least love what you do. And, and I was fortunate to have one of those opportunities. So I did that for 20 years and then sold that company. I had 7 clubs. I sold them all. And at the time I had about $3 million in the bank. That was my life savings. Okay. That was my life savings. So I'm about 40 years old, my life savings, 3 million. Now, keep in mind, starting from nothing, Mike, I was feeling really good about myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? I thought, wow, I've done pretty well for myself, I'm thinking, right? And then about 6 months later, I decided to get right back into the space that I loved. When I sold it all, I was thinking I was going to do something else, but then I just said to myself, why leave a space that you're so passionate about? And there's so much goodwill behind it because you're changing lives every day. So I started thinking about, what would a club look like? And myself and one of my former employees were thinking about, okay, we're going to eliminate the swimming pool, eliminate racquetball, eliminate childcare. So instead of this club being 40,000 square feet, it ended up being about 4,000 square feet. Instead of 50 employees, I had 2. And now I didn't know at the time I was going to be building one of the largest wellness brands in the world. I mean, you know what I mean? I was just building something, putting a little bit of my capital back at work, and it just took off. I mean, the one club I built, it took off. I built it in an urban market, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I built the second one in a mid-sized market. It performed the exact same way. The unit level economics all came into play. You know, the rent was a little bit less. Yes, there was probably less opportunity because the population density was less. But when the rent is less and labor is less, I mean, everything fell into line. And that club performed the same way as the first one. I sold enough memberships in 90 days to cash flow for the year. And then I said, I got to know how small is, because now I'm thinking I might have something here. I wasn't sure. So I needed to know how small could be. So I built a club in a town of 3,500 people. And to my astonishment, it performed just like the others. And it was at that time that I knew I had a tiger by the tail. And fast forward it now 15 years. And I've expanded that one brand into multiple brands. Today I have, 3 major brands that constitute about 6,000 locations in 28 countries. Wow. So it's been an unbelievable ride.
Holy.
But understand, I've had the good fortune. I've worked with some really incredible people that are as passionate about I am as of what I do. So I got to stand on the shoulders of some amazing people over the last 15 years of building that brand. And wow. I stepped down as a CEO about a year and a half ago. Wow. So I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations of the company anymore. And so now I just focus on some other things, but I still serve on the board, and I still know the direction that they're going, but I'm just not involved in the day-to-day stuff anymore.
Oh my goodness. See, Peter, thank you, by the way, for sharing that. I gotta be honest with you, when I hear this, I'm a storyteller and I love telling stories. And what I hear out of this is like, there's a couple, I see the commercial, right? I'm thinking Brad Pitt maybe might be the right guy here for doing this, but but I see the commercial. Actually, you know what am I talking about? You're still in great enough shape that you could even just run the role. First and foremost, you're a young kid. I love the fact that you just, glazed over the fact that you were a professional racquetball player. So we're going to come back to that for a second. Yeah. But you're super passionate about just something that matters to you in that moment. And you know what it's like to work hard, and you have a facility that's there. So passion is it's just all around you. And especially when like in your late teens, early 20s, it just feels like everything is about passion. Like it's the only really thing that kind of gets you off the couch and doing something is passion. So you're just pumped, right? And both physically and almost mentally, right? Like you're very focused on what you want to do, and you're charged to get there. What I love, just even I'm just looking at a lot of similarities in the way probably that you handled yourself on the racquetball court, and how you translated that over into business. Is you got to be honest about what's wrong. Like if a part of your game isn't where it needs to be, or if part of your business isn't where it needs to be at its best, then you gotta not be afraid to, get dirty and clean it up. And that takes time, like you were talking about, sweeping floors and dusting off shelves. So, even from that perspective, and, hand greeting at the beginning, but think about how that translates into other parts of your life. And, if your serve is off, you're in the gym and you're serving 500,000, 1,500 balls to get the feel of it, to get the muscle memory of it, because there's a big component to that. It feels like that, at least from the way that you're explaining it to business. And by the way, I'm not retelling your story. I'm marveling at like the highlight level. So this is my commercial. But then what I loved here is that you're not afraid to challenge the leadership component. Who's the right person for you? And I'm thinking about even like Rocky Balboa and Mickey, right? Like you got to have the right coach, to kind of teach you what's going on. You have to have the right people around you, not that just understand the game that you're in, but also understand who you are and the power that you bring to that game. And I just love the balls that you had to go after, you know, seasoned gentlemen who knew you. It's not like that you were some strange kid, a salesman off the road, handing a card in a suit and a suitcase. Like, you were in there sweating on their floor every single day. And so for you to come to them, I mean, you at some level, it sounds like you earned their respect enough to say, hey, listen, I don't think you're the right guy to run this thing.
I had the utmost respect for all of the owners,
totally.
and the respect that I had for them is they had this business that was, you know, an important component of the small community I grew up in. And these guys, this thing was losing $200,000 a year cash flow. Okay, not on paper, like literally cash flow. There was 5 owners. So every year these owners were kicking in 40,000 cash out of their wallet into the business just to keep the lights on. So what I appreciated about them is that they didn't throw in the towel, and they kept eating it because they knew it was an important component of the community.
Yeah.
The other side of it is, you know, for me, talking about sports, and anyone that's played sports at any level, if you've played any sport well, it takes discipline.
Yeah.
And discipline, to me, discipline is what holds you accountable, right? I mean, it's what holds ourselves accountable to our dreams. And I talk about this all the time. Even today, I say, are you living your perfect life? And it's a fair question for people. I get the opportunity. I'm blessed to be able to communicate with a lot of people and sometimes they feel stuck in their life, or they feel stuck in their relationship. So I ask them the simple question: are you living the perfect life? And if not, you know, why aren't you? And what would you change? That's kind of where I start with people. But it boils right down to, you know, discipline and accountability. And to me, those 2 words, they hold side by side, because if you don't have discipline, you won't hold yourself accountable, right? You'll just skate. Anytime things get hard, you're just going to skate. You're just going to get after it, right? Because you're going to find a reason, you're going to find an excuse. And the other side of it is to win, because without that accountability, without that discipline, the hard work is gone, because you're never going to stand in there. I love a quote from Steve Jobs, and Steve said, hey, look, you got to be a little bit crazy to get into business, because you've got a 90% chance of failing just out of the gate. And it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sacrifice. And even after you do all those things, there's no guarantee that you're going to win. So there's some truth to it. So, but I can tell you, in my humble opinion, without discipline and accountability, your chances of winning are not going to, they drop dramatically, because you're not willing to sacrifice.
Totally. No, 100% love that. And you know what I love, and that kind of brings me into like this next kind of core thought I got from your story was, so it's funny because that's like, when you look at the commercial of your life right now, which I don't mean to minimize it to something so short, but there's a lot of sweat, blood, and tears that go into that 10 seconds of the hard work. You know what I mean? So, and I think that's something that people, when maybe they hear your story, they're like, oh yeah, you know, he worked hard, right? It's like not even worth the words that it's on, because it's like, you don't even know, like, you know, you're talking about years, like you can't just say that in 5 words, you know? And so, yeah, you're right. I did, but I don't think you fully grasp what happened here, you know? And, but all of that, you know, I think comes to the summation of the fact that you believed in yourself and you weren't afraid to invest in yourself. You know, when they gave you the offer of 16 grand, was it a year, or is it 16 grand just one time? A year. Yeah. So 16 grand a year to come in and to, you know, shape this thing up. How old were you, by the way, when they gave you the call?
I was like 22.
Okay. Yeah. So
23.
You're 22, 23. I mean, obviously it's a super, you know, I'm making 16 grand a year now, and I was asked to come in and fix a business. This is crazy, but you still have to actually cross the chasm in your mind that you can do this. You know, it's almost like, yeah, you have great ideas, but I think I wonder, and maybe this is something we bring into like the, you know, the core, you know, steps that when we kind of transition into that next bit is, how did you do this? It sounds like part of that is going to be the whole belief of, if you need to believe that you can do this, because you'll never cross the chasm from ideation to action without that bridge of belief, right? And or that epiphany bridge, as Russell Brunson says it sometimes.
Yeah, it's, you know what, it's so true, Mike. And you know what, fear is a dream killer. Fear is a dream killer, and fear throws a wet blanket on anything. And let's face it, people don't like to fail. All right. Nobody goes into anything to fail. I don't care what it is, especially intentionally. And so that whole fear of failure. But I can tell you, if I lined up 50 successful business people, I mean, they would, every one of them would share with you so many stories of trials and tribulation, of failure. And that is honestly where that's where all the growth takes place. Because when things are going great, it's kind of euphoric and you're thinking, wow, I've kind of figured it out. And so there's not a lot of thinking that has to go into it when you're winning all the time.
Yeah.
But when you overcome adversity, what's the first thing you do? When you're in the middle of the heat, in the middle of the fire, you got to take a step back, and because a normal process is you got to assess what's going on, and you have to, if you're smart, you're going to pivot accordingly to try to fight your way out of whatever situation you're in.
I love it. Yeah.
And so that is the critical part of. That's why I say, man, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, and there's some real truth behind that.
I agree. Okay, cool. I am just chomping at the bit to jump into these like underlying pillars, because there's so much gold here, and I know people are writing stuff down right now, but I want to give them like just some amazing context into this. So, so let's jump into you gave us this amazing story, and it's funny. How many years have you been like from when you started to today? How many years has that been?
35 years.
35 years. Okay, so you gave this amazing story that encapsulated 35 years. So what I would love to do is maybe at different strokes of the story. Like, you know, if you want to talk about what was the first, which was probably the hardest, I would say, because it was the first, you know, clean it up, get it profitable, you know, between that and the decision of getting into the other loan. I would just love to know, like, and then we can move on to once you started seeing the success and building your brands. Then, what I'm thinking through right now is I don't just want to stick on green entrepreneurs, but what, you know, once someone says, great, that's great, and I passed that too. Now I'm here, and I want to know what Peter has to say about what happens when you're kind of moving from, you know, from you know, the $3 million to the $30 million, right? Or how do you think about scale once I've kind of grown it to something sustainable? And then finally, you know, what's the strategy in exiting? And I don't know, and I'm not saying exiting from your company or business, but even from the CEO position, from the day-to-day. So I don't want to, again, I don't want to summarize it too much, because I want to value all the detail that's in there. But do you think it'd be okay if we kind of maybe hit those three major chapters in your story, just because you kind of alluded to those?
Well, of course, I'd love to. And
Beautiful.
So in the 35 year, you take the kid with the mullet coming up and
I'd love to see a picture of that, by the way. We'll put that as a thumbnail.
It's not a good look, Mike. And I probably hung on to it a little longer than I should have too. That's what even makes it even more embarrassing. But anyway, I want every one of your listeners to understand that in the 35 years, so I'm going to break it down for you. And I happen to have been in the health and wellness space, but I'm telling you, the nuggets of gold, the foundation of what made me successful, are applicable in any business that you're in. So wonderful. Today I do a lot of consulting, all kinds of different businesses, and I go back to the same principles. And keep in mind, the other part of this whole narrative is to understand that anything is possible, that you can take a kid who went to school in a 2-room schoolhouse, who quit college, got into business for himself, to turning around a failing health club, to building a $200+ million company. I mean, that's an amazing feat in itself. So the first step in that process is believing in yourself.
Believing in yourself. I love it. That's step one.
That is the foundation. You got to believe in yourself, because there's going to be some real trials along the way. And if you can't look in the mirror and say, I've got this, if you can't be, number one, you've got to be passionate about it, because if you're not passionate about it, you would throw in the towel the first sign of failure rears its head. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because pride gets in the way of that. But so understanding you're going to find something that you're passionate about, which it happened to have been the health and wellness space. But then the second thing is you've got to visualize it in your head. You got to visualize, what is it that I want to do? And you know what? I always say, almost look at it like the North Star. It's way out there. Another way to visualize it is it's a blank canvas. You have the brush in your hand. What does this life of yours look like? And I don't care if you're 15 or 85, right? It's never too late to make the change, but paint that thing. What does that North Star look like for you? However grandiose it is, what is that dream that you want to chase? And then, really important, create milestones along the way. Because I'm telling you, to my point earlier, Mike, my journey was 35 years and my journey still isn't over.
Totally.
But think about the time of all the years of just one road rash after another, to just simply having grit, not falling under my desk in the fetal position, but literally spitting in my palms every day and thinking, I've got this. And so you've got to have complete confidence in yourself. You got to be passionate about what you're doing, because the second part of it is that passion is going to be inspiring to those around you. And believe me, it was a part of my success along the way was really having people believe in me. They were inspired by me, and that passion became contagious. So pretty soon I had a small army of people working for me that were just on fire for winning. And that helps. I mean, I would say winning in business, it's a team sport. Make no mistake about it. I just happen to have had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of some amazing and dedicated people. So I feel really fortunate.
That's amazing. And I love this. If it's all right, because I do want to go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
That was an amazing answer. But I'm thinking about the folks that, especially right now, are not confident in themselves. They are not passionate really about anything. If anything, their dreams are squashed by survival, right? It's I need to survive in this place. And you know what? This isn't just pandemic specific. People, and you know this is why people come to gyms, is they get stuck in this mindset. And if you could speak either to, let's just say, the voices that were in your head that were trying to just utterly cripple you, put you in that fetal position, if you will, underneath your desk. What are some voices that you had, or that you have seen other entrepreneurs that were in that position that maybe you were in, give or take some details? And what are the voices that you hear, or sorry, that you believe that they're saying, and how do you silence those voices so you can get into the mind frame that you're telling us to get into right now? So what were some of the voices, A, in your head? B, what were some of the voices that you see in other folks' heads as you're doing this consulting work? And how can you coach people out of that, or at least the steps to get into the right mind frame to get to where you are right now?
I think, for me, reflection is so key in all of our lives. And I think it's important to continually reflect on every aspect of your life. I mean, business is one side of it. Business, your relationships, your family, your friends. I would say holding yourself accountable on so many different fronts. How do you want to roll? How do you want to show up every day? Now, for me, playing racquetball, I mean, you couldn't make a living at it. All right. So I'm being the youngest of 7, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but believe me, you become really practical in your mindset. Now, for me, it was not practical to think that I was going to make a living at playing racquetball. So for me, just reflecting on that, I said, look, I need to have a plan B. And it so happened that I got the call from the owners to turn around this failing club. Now, that was fortunate for me. That fell right into my wheelhouse because I was passionate about it. Now, I didn't know at the time that I was even going to be successful at turning that health club around. But I knew this. I knew I was getting into a business that I had an opportunity. I had no plan B. What I was doing wasn't working. So I think sometimes if you feel like you're stuck in whatever it is that you're doing, understand, let's say that you've been doing it for 10 years. At some point in time, you need to reflect, and then you need to assess where you're at. and ask yourself, are you truly happy with what you're doing? Because what you've been doing the last 10 years is not working. So do you want to live, I mean, if you're 50 years, do you want to live the next 50 years doing the same thing that you don't love? Because, you know, they say, you know, if you continue doing the same thing, it's the definition of insanity,
Right.
doing the same thing over and over again, right? And expecting a different result. So pretty soon you're doing something for 10 years, you blink and you've been at it for 15, you've been at it for 20 years. And life, it's not a dress rehearsal. So I'm a big advocate of, hey, look, if you're not rolling to your jam every day, then you need to take action. And action takes courage. All right. I'm not saying just be willy-nilly. I mean, have a plan. You got to say, look, I need to save. And then this is something that I see all the time, Mike, that is just, I'm amazed at people say, I want to change. I want to switch careers. I say, that's great. I get right into financing right away because that's my practical side. Yeah. I tell them, how much money do you have saved? I go right there. Yeah. How much money do you have saved? You know, it's almost none. Okay. They're a month away from being out of money. Well, I say, well, that's not good planning. So then we go through, you know, wants and needs. I got to help them create a budget so they can start saving more money so they can actually make a move on what it is they want to change. Because they, you know, and then start looking for that job, find the things that you're passionate about so you can start moving in that direction. So at least when you pivot, you're pivoting into something that you can be passionate about, that you can truly enjoy. Now, the second part of it is, once again, practicality. Can you make a living at it? And in my case, Mike, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a game warden, okay? Because I loved the outdoors. I loved wildlife. I wanted to be a game warden until I found out they make about 20 grand a year at that time. And I'm like, that's not going to get it done for me. I want to be able to travel and have a decent car and a home someday. So I immediately switched gears into something else because that was no longer, that wouldn't support the dream that I had in my head. So that's the big part of it. So early on, it's really confidence in yourself, and then being practical and having the discipline to squirrel away some money so that you're not that you're not dead in the water, 45 days after leaving your job.
I love this. And, Peter, that's amazing stuff. I was just taking some notes here while you were talking. And do you mind if you hit a couple passion notes to me. So I don't, again, this is about you and your story, but do you mind if I just come in and
no, it's fine. And look, anything that you want to ask me, I've had a lot of experiences along the way. There's nothing off the table. So
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate that. And, so I'll tell you some of the things that I heard out of that, which was really, really, and I'm talking about like big milestone things that people need to get to. One, when you have voices in your head, or or even not even in your head, even around you, if you have people around you that consistently tell you, you can't do it. This is who you are. This box that you're in right now, expect to be there for the rest of your life. That is who you are. Don't change. Don't try and change, because this is who you're going to be. If that is the influence that you have around you and in you, then you got to change what's around you and what's in you, right? Because first and foremost, especially if there's a desire, I'm talking to people that want to change. Obviously, you can't help people that don't want to be helped. I'm not touching that one right now, but for the people that want change, you need to reevaluate. Like Peter's saying, where are you now and where do you want to be? And is your immediate situation right now promoting you or inspiring you to get to where you want to be? And if it's not, you know what, like Peter did with when he talked at the very beginning, is you got to sweep up your gym a little bit. You got to tighten the screws a little bit here. And you know what, sometimes it means you got to jump into a different vehicle, move to a different state, move to a different friend group, jump off Facebook, for like whatever that means for you. You got to figure out where those voices and where that message is coming from, and you got to shut it off. Because and then after that, you got to figure out, where are the people, where are they congregating that where I need to be a part of. And I love one thing that you said, action takes courage. That even just the step one that I talked about, that is no small thing for some folks. And I want to tell you, if you're in that position right now listening to this and you're listening to Peter's story And if part of you is thinking, well, yeah, I mean, he has a $200 million company. It's easy for him to say that now. It's not easy for Peter to say that now. It's not easy for anyone to say that now, because all of us are always facing that. Is who do we have around us right now that is pushing us to grow? Because, Peter's just stepped down from the CEO of his own company, and he's not dead. Like, he's looking to the next thing, and who does he have around him that's saying, Peter, man, you can do this, not because you have X, Y, and Z money, and because you live in X, Y, and Z house, or because you have X, Y, and Z, success. It's because I know who you are. And those are the people that Peter decided to have around himself. And that's what you need to do starting like right now. Once you have that, then what I'm hearing from you, Peter, is start asking very hard questions. Now that the noise and the voices and the inspiration that was driving you to continue staying in your own, hamster wheel are gone. You got to ask yourself the question, where do you want to be, and what's holding you back right now of getting you there? And if your money is holding you back from getting there, and it's because you suck at finances, again, Peter, we didn't talk about this before, but the last company that I had the privilege of working with and helping out was a financial company. I was working with folks like this all day long, where they're saying, I suck at saving. And it's like, okay, well, it's great that you can admit that, but what are you going to do about it? So then you got to actually get a plan. And that plan does not have to be, I want to make $1 million in a month. Like, it has to be digestible. What can you do today that will inspire you to stick with the plan the next day? And if it's health, what are you going to cut out of your diet today, just small enough that you can win and say, I did it. And then that might feel a little Mickey Mouse for some folks, but it really isn't, because a habit and behavior, as you know, running gyms, if you see people come in 2 or 3 times and then they get the sore muscle syndrome and they're like, it's not for me. I mean, it's the people that push through. And I'd love to know kind of what that day looks like. Cause I mean, the science tells us it's 30 days, but I wonder for you, if you have a better number because you actually are in it every day. But the whole point is that it takes a while to get the muscles, right? It's like we were talking about with racquetball, and like we're talking about with business. It takes a while for those muscles to get built and developed. And remember, the reason why you do it every day is because you have made a decision to step away from this life and to move forward towards this life. And that doesn't happen in a day. Peter, it's been 35 years, and that's been 35 years of him pressing every single day, even if it's an inch forward, sometimes it's a mile forward. But the point is not how far did you get in today, is you celebrate what you got to by creating these milestones. And you're saying, man, I reached this milestone. It didn't matter if it took me a day, a year, or 10 years. The point is I did it, and I did not stop until I got there. Anyway, I'm sorry, I just got infused with passion when you're talking about it. And I just want to make sure people know that that's not just this decision that you make. Like, there's maybe a few decisions that you have to get there, but I promise you, you start believing and seeing your own value and what you're capable of doing. And that is how you believe in yourself. That is how you start getting confidence in yourself. Now, that's just my take. I don't know, Peter, am I way off here? Or would you agree with that? Or
no, and just to try to anchor that point, just it's probably been a month ago now, but I had an individual approach me. He's probably in his late 30s, and he felt like he was really stuck in his life. And the same thing, I always ask people, who are you supporting yourself? Who is your tribe? Who are the people that are? And because I say, look, how much support do you have around me for chasing your dream? Because you're not happy with what you're doing. You feel like you're stuck in your job and you're stuck in your relationship, which is a whole other topic. But sticking in your job, you've made a decision that you want to leave, but you're not quite sure what it's going to look like. But I drilled it back even to, who am I hanging out with? Because he's the kind of guy that he had his routine. I mean, they're watching football on Sundays, middle of the week, they might bowl and throw darts or whatever. But, his tribe of people that he's hanging out with, the boys, if you will. And I just said, look at the people that are texting you the most. And I ask yourself the question, are they fanning your flame or are they dousing your flame?
I love that. Oh, I love that.
See what is that? Because the first person that you got to be your own strongest advocate. You got to be the first advocate for yourself. You got to believe in yourself, because you can't look for others to support you or to give you that, give you the thing. It's ultimately got to come from within you. But I tell you what, I don't care how strong you are, you are going to have those days where you're going to feel less than great. We all do. And that's when you need your supporting cast. And it's important. And what was interesting with this individual, he took 3 of the 5 friends that he was hanging out with, 3 of them, who all kind of felt the same way. So once again, when you're going to make a pivot, having the support of your friends and family is an important component. And I told him, go to your friends and tell them that you're not happy with your life. Be real, be vulnerable, right? Swallow your pride and just be freaking real for a change and say, look, I don't want to wake up one day being 50 and doing the same shit, I love you guys, but we're throwing darts and we're still hating our jobs. We're hating our lives. I don't want to be that guy. So, well, 2 of his 5 people in his tribe, they go, I want to make a change too. Well, now all 3 of them, they're moving in a path and they're supporting each other and they kind of hold each other accountable and they're making little moves, right? Yeah. And all of it is becoming, they're getting in shape. They all had that, anywhere from 15 to 30 pounds of fun around their waist that they want. I go, look, let's just get real. Let's just change everything. Let's get really creative and profound on what our thinking looks like. Because one of the reasons I like it is when you're standing there and you're 20 pounds overweight, and the next time you blink, you're down to 10 pounds. You're motivated. You're inspired now. You're doing something that you like. You just got a whole new skip in your walk, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
But the point is, to make a change, it requires action, and action is what's going to make the ball move. Okay. And every time that ball moves a little bit, you become inspired, you become motivated. It's such an important component of winning in the big picture.
Oh, I love that so much. And then the plan helps you take action because you've now strategized what actions you need to take. And
think of it as vision, plan, execution.
Love it.
Okay, you got to visualize it. Now you got to plan for it, and now it's execution. Because you can vision, you could plan, but with no action, it's just a waste of everyone's time.
Oh man, I love it. And I know you and we could spend like 3 hours on this and just bring up stories and examples. But I do want to move into a bit of the next chapter that we had talked about in your story, which is, you know what, you got rid of the voices, you got rid of the bad influences around around yourself, and you're inspiring people to do that, both on a personal level, but also for a professional level, because you can't have that kind of influence around you when you're trying to, think about starting a business, especially with the stats that you had given earlier, Steve Jobs saying, you got to be courageous to jump into this. And so for those entrepreneurs or e-compreneurs that are trying to get into this, if you are not your own greatest fan, jumping into it, and that's not something you're carrying every single day, you almost have to just put a pause, almost have a bit of a self time or self day or self week or whatever it is that you need to re-switch your thinking, get your plan back, get your action steps back, and just get back into mode, because that's the only way, that's how you're starting, right? Like, entrepreneurs don't normally start with a whole world of staff and a business to start running. They're usually just them and themselves in their room and trying to just get their amazing idea out there.
And that's hard today, Mike, because here's the reality. And this is something, honestly, that I deal with constantly with people, and it starts with social media.
Yeah.
Social media is essentially a highlight reel of everyone's life. And it can really be demoralizing when you're looking at it and you're thinking, my gosh, I suck, right?
Yeah, and, right. Yeah.
Tell them, right. I mean, because if you're not just walking around with a wad of cash in your pocket, if you're not driving a Ferrari and you're not flying in planes and jet setting from one end of the country to the other, staying in 5-star hotels, you feel like a complete failure.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and I try to put it into the right perspective for people, is that's everyone's highlight reel. And then even if you take that highlight reel, 90% of it is BS. So just understand that that's not real. It's not real life.
It's Photoshopped. It's rented things. It's
bullshit stuff, right? It's not to say that it can't happen.
Sure.
So I would say the most important component of all of this is perspective. Yeah. Because without perspective, you lose sight of the timeline. I mean, I get people to say, I want to be a millionaire.
Okay. Now. Yeah.
Exactly. And I ask him, that's my follow-up question. Oh, you want to be a millionaire? I remember, and I tell him, I remember that. I remember literally praying to God. I used to pray. I used to pray all the time to God for stuff. Okay. And
Yeah.
I mean,
The genie. Yeah.
he just rolls his eyes at me, but he knew what he was getting with me. But I would always pray for, and I said, oh God, can I please, if you can get it to where I can make $100,000 a year, this is the honest God truth, Mike. I used to say, just get me a job where I can make $100,000 a year and I'll never ask for anything again.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I was always moving the ball on him. Right.
Yeah.
But
now, sorry, I meant a million. Sorry, I forgot a zero.
So having perspective means everything, because without perspective, you can't realize you're going to feel like a failure because you don't really know how hard and difficult it is. But here's the reality. Once you get momentum, that's where that momentum is what you will fuel on and what you will thrive on. Because you can see when I turned around that failing health club, believe me, I remember the first year that I was in that club, Mike. The club went from losing 200,000 to losing 100,000. Wow. And I remember the owners, I was pumped, and here's perspective. I was pumped, and the owners were like, well, we still lost 100 grand. Right. And I'm like, I said, no, you made 100.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
That's how you look at it.
Yep.
Right. And they kind of looked at me, different perspective, because my glass was not half, my glass wasn't half full. Right. Yeah. And so I put it in perspective. And now then the next year, but the reality of it is in 5 years, I took that business from losing 200 grand to making 250. And then 3 years from that point, I ended up owning the gym. Right. So once I had momentum, I just kept doing what I was doing that was working and winning. I focused on that. Those were the areas that I doubled down. I focused on the material things. And that's another, I think a nice lesson for people to hear is that sometimes when you can make your business or your life so technical and you can get bogged down in all the moving parts. So just a word of advice that's worked for me is take a step back and look at all the material moving parts. What are the ones that really make the difference? What are the ones that really move the needle? And I think when you do that, you're going to find that literally, 80% of your time might be just completely wasted and just not focusing on the right stuff.
That's good. And you know what? Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we use that to transition into scale? Sure. So once it took 8 years. We could sit all day, man. I'm so tempted to stay there because there's so much gold back there, but maybe we do a part 2 of this or something like that. We'll co-write a book. And, but anyway, so step 1, believing in yourself, and so much gold. And if you didn't listen to that, I encourage you to rewind, listen to that, because this next one is going to be, once you are in a position where you are in a business and you figured out how to sell this thing and where to bring it, and now you're in a position where you have a business that's not making maybe a ton of money, but it's profitable. It's profitable. Even if it's only $1, it's profitable, right? So it means that it's self-sustaining and you're able to survive doing it. But now you're thinking, cool, now I'm there. What I want to do is I want to scale, but I'm scared to scale because A, I don't know how, and B, I don't know where. I don't know where I'm supposed to scale, right? So launching off that last thing that you said, and what you had said, you want to look at all the material moving parts and assess. So it seems like that's just part of your visualize. Sorry, you had 3 earlier. It was visualize.
So you need vision, what you want to do, a plan, and then execute.
Plan and execute. Okay. So vision, plan, execute. Okay. So you've done that already. And now it's working, but now you got to assess and you got to figure out how we actually going to do this thing where I'm not going to lose all the work that I just did. I'm not going to lose all the profits that I just did. And that's where the fear kicks in. So Peter, how would you, what's step 2? How are you going to mentor that person? How are you going to communicate to that person? What do they need to be thinking about, with scaling? Do they scale? Don't they scale? When do they scale? Let's dive into that.
So the key, I'll just use for this example, we'll just use Snap Fitness as my example. Yeah. So let's just put Snap Fitness in a fishbowl and take a good look at it. Cool. So I had built out a handful of stores in an urban market, a mid-sized market, and a small community, a little rural town, and they were all performing. So I knew that the dogs were eating the dog food, regardless of the size of the market that it was in. I knew that this product, I could pick it up and drop it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the time, when you're thinking about scale, I wasn't thinking at the time that I was going to be an international brand.
Right.
I was just thinking about how do I grow this right here under my nose? The reason that's important is you don't go from 0 to 100 in a blink of an eye.
Right.
If you're smart, you're gonna have managed growth, managed scale.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at it. What are the core components that I needed to have to grow my franchise business? You know, I had my accounting, I had my legal, I had my real estate, I had the different components of it, and I knew that I could leverage that into opening multiple locations. So
Right.
I leveraged that. I didn't have to double down on those resources because those resources were already part of my fixed cost.
Correct.
So that's where I started and doubling down and literally thinking about it. The first year I opened up 12 stores.
Wow.
By year two, that was very managed growth. The second year, I think I opened about 70 new stores. By the third year, I opened close to 200 stores. And my record year was my fifth year. I opened 377 new stores in 1 year.
Holy.
That's not 377 signed leases.
Yeah.
That's 377 new doors opening up with people exercising. So I was opening a club, more than one club a day. And here was the beautiful part. If you walked into my headquarters, there was not people running around with their hair on fire. Everyone stayed in their lane. So it's very important that as you're looking at your growth, as you're looking at scale, that you understand what are the key moving components of the big wheel, because you can't go from 0 to 1,000 locations, and every time you turn around, it feels like the lug nuts are coming off the bus.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It's got to be very managed, because in the franchise business, the franchisee who gave you their money last feels like they're the most important person in the room.
Correct. Yes.
And they are. And you know what? They are. To me, every franchisee that gave me their hard-earned money and said, Peter, I want to have one of these. I entrust in you that you're going to get me to the promised land of owning and running a successful business. So when people gave me their money, it was my job to help them catch the rainbow.
Right.
So, and that's how I positioned it with my staff. I said, look, we've got to be all in, ready to help people, reach their dream.
And so I love that. And that's incredible growth. I have a few friends that were starting in the fitness, sorry, it's not starting, that they were doing literally exactly what you were doing, but it folded after 6 or 7 years because of just poor management. Right. So it was, they just had, which kind of goes right back to your first, kind of few points that you made, is making sure you have the right leadership. But it sounds to me that you needed to actually create the recipe for success. And in order to do that, if I'm just going to kind of break this down a little bit, in order to do that, you needed to just kind of put everything out on the open and say, literally, what's working, what's not working, and what can we duplicate and should we duplicate as not so much an MVP, like a minimal viable product, but how can we actually get something, trim it right down to its grassroots, because we know that everyone's going to have a little bit of their own flavor to it, because they're all franchisees, right? Like they're all folks that
they're all franchise, and you're leveraging some of the infrastructure you can leverage across multiple brands. Like when you think of my brands today, it's called Lift Brands. Lift Brands, and underneath Lift Brands is Snap Fitness, 9 Round, Fitness on Demand, Yoga Fit. So these are all wellness companies under one umbrella, but every one of those companies, they share one legal department,
right,
one accounting department, one marketing department, one real estate department. So I've leveraged the infrastructure, the admin across multiple brands. That's why for me, it's exciting when I look at a brand out there, especially a brand that might be 30, 40 locations. They're just a baby brand.
Right.
And I can acquire them and immediately I get scale. If what they have is good, many times I help them with the branding, but I put the infrastructure and the cash flow behind it, which gives it trajectory. And then I just launch it. I mean, with 9 Round, when I bought into that concept, they had about 20 locations.
Right.
And I told them, hey, look, And we completely rebranded them. We changed their logo. We changed their FDD.
Mm-hmm.
We implemented vertical integration into the brand. And today they have 1,000 locations. It's been probably 5 years.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
It truly is. And it just goes to show that, the basic, don't lose sight of the core fundamentals of what it takes to grow a business. Hold fast to those principles, and you can leverage that across any industry,
mm-hmm.
any business. But you'd have to be very mindful on what it is you're doing. You can't be running around chasing everything. You got to be able to pull back a little bit and really dive into what are the material components of the growth of this business.
I love that.
It's easy to get lost in the minutia.
Totally.
It really is.
Totally. Well, and it's the analysis paralysis, right? Is like, you get stuck on a certain point when you should be looking at this point. You're stuck here, right? And I was going to ask.
Let me make one quick point.
Yeah, please go ahead.
One thing that I see, an analogy that I always use, there's times that I come in and I consult. I'm not going to say names,
mm-hmm.
but I look at companies and they're explaining everything to me, and the company is on a negative plane, and I listen to them until they're done.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you guys, you're shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
You're not focusing on the core business, on what your core business is. And if you're curious as to what it is, just ask your customer, because it's very easy for companies to sit in a room and sit around and smoke their own exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to know if you're relevant or not, ask your customer.
Yeah.
Don't ask the customers that are in your space. Ask the customers who are excellent.
I love that.
Them, right. Why did you exit the business? Tell me, how did I fail you? And tell them, don't give you the uncensored version. Yeah. Because there are so many times that companies, they think they're great and they refuse to pivot. And it's that pivoting, once again, just like early on in starting the business, it required courage. And because when you're going to pivot, it requires courage, because you're afraid, because you're going to move in a different direction, and you're hoping that they're about to pivot to brings you closer to the line of relevance with your customer base.
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Now, here's the choice. If you don't pivot, you're going to die. Yeah. Perfect example, Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Okay. Blockbuster was the shining darling in the movie rental space. Okay. And then when streaming came along, they were dead, and they went from 100 miles an hour to a dead stop in 3 years. They were dead in the water. Now they don't exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're 100% right.
You have to pivot. You have to constantly evolve and pivot.
So then, okay. So I'm sitting here, and and let's say I'm thinking about all the e-compreneurs or the entrepreneurs that are out there listening to this. Are like, oh my gosh, this is so good, but I'm overwhelmed because I know I want to pivot, and I get that, but I need to start. And I think you just gave the answer right there. Is at the very beginning, before you even think about like the financial gains and things like that, about scale, you need to figure out what is it that your customers love most about you, about your brand, about your product, and what do they say you are? You might think that you're like that you provide like the best machines, for example, in your gyms, right? Where actually what they care more about is, the person sitting at the front desk, is that person knows their name. And you're thinking about the quality of the equipment when, they're thinking about this. So if you put all your time and money and investment into the equipment and not in replicating what this person is doing, then you're going to miss it on when you scale. You're not going to see what you're looking for, because you thought the answer was here, where it's here. So one is you ask the customers, what is it they love? What do they want to see more of? What do they need to kind of see less of? And you're going to get a whole slew of answers that come in. And the whole point of that is to dive in, because these are your customers. These are the people that keep your lights on. You're not the one keeping your lights on. They are. And they're the ones that are going to be coming into your next gym, or have friends and family in other places that are coming into your next gym. So you need to find out what they're saying, connect the dots, get whatever lists and graphs and Gantt charts or whatever it is that you want to get put together, and say, this is what's working, this is what's not working. And so before we even scale, before we think about opening it up another one, we want to try and remove these, sequentially, and see if this list starts growing. Like if you remove the fact that, you're not, or sorry, that maybe you're 9 to 5 and you open up to 12 hours a day, how does that improve this, right? And so you want to slowly start bringing that in so you can measure it properly. That way you're not capturing the whole list and you have no idea why this list grew, it didn't grow or whatever. But
And
once
yeah, that's right. It's a great point that you're making, and the point that you're making is it's relevant
yeah,
on any business that you're talking about. And I'll use it in the health club space. It's not about faster treadmills or heavier weights anymore.
yeah,
It's about community and culture within the four walls.
mm-hmm.
It's the connectivity with your membership base. And it's not necessarily the connectivity through a mobile app. It's the connectivity that I feel when I walk into a space. Now,
Yes.
COVID has played a dramatic role in that,
Yeah.
but in the restaurant space too, we see it all the time. I was just doing some consulting a couple of weeks ago with a restaurant chain, and they were talking about the threat. And this person has a small chain, three locations,
Mm-hmm.
but there's bigger players coming into the space. And I said, look, here at the end of the day, you need to take a step back and realize who you are,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not, your food is great quality.
Sure.
And you have great quality food. Is your restaurant kind of tired? Yeah, it's kind of tired, but in a cute way.
Yeah.
And understand, you are a part of this community. Mm-hmm. So I told them, kudos for you. When there's a parade in this community, you're part of the parade. Mm-hmm. You're sponsoring the little league teams. You're part of the football teams.
Yep.
As long as you continue to do that, the people of this community are going to continue to support you.
Yeah, so homegrown nostalgia, it's going to play. Yeah.
It's got to play. And especially today's day and age, people love that whole locally owned feel and fight, totally. Right? So work that to your, don't let your food quality slide. Don't cut labor. So now people's dining experience is going to be compromised. Mm-hmm. Just really focus on, make sure your restaurant's clean, make sure that your food quality remains the same, be creative and innovative with what you're doing. Mm-hmm. In other words, don't stand at your front door waving a white towel, right? Giving up to everything. Dig in and say, look, it's kind of like, is it David and Goliath?
Yep.
I mean, be David. Yeah. And just don't blink and hit that son of a bitch right between the eyes.
That's right. You know I mean?
You got to have a little of that fight in you sometimes, because, coming into a market, watching the competition run scared, there's nothing more satisfying to a business than come in and watch the competition just scatter and roll on their bellies. Totally. Just dig in and be confident who you are and what got you there.
I love that. And so whenever you're feeling nervous or scared, that's the attitude that you got to have, is reflect on where you've been, reflect on what it took for you to get there, reflect on the attitude and the position and the grit that you had to have, and say, no, I still got that. That didn't get lost. I still have that. And I got to carry that into my next phase, even in your scale. And then before you scale, find out what your customer is saying, find out what they love, create the recipe for your brand. And then say, whenever I scale, I'm not gonna scale to the 100, or to the 1,000. I'm actually gonna scale this, and like, I love what you did. I'm gonna scale this just a little bit. I'm gonna say, cool. I'm gonna
scale to scale.
Yeah, scale to scale. Yeah.
Yeah, scale to scale, and that's so important. And what I want to anchor the last point that just came to my head on the guy with the restaurants. Mm-hmm. He was running scared before. Keep in mind, this was the competition that was coming to his market they were just under construction. Yeah. So he was already in his head
freaking out. Yeah.
Freaking out and assuming that his sales were going to fall and that it was over for him. And we immediately pivoted his mindset. Mm-hmm. So the cleanup I needed to do in his case, it started with the 6 inches between his ears.
That's right. Yeah.
And then we got him back to inspiring his team, his employees, to say, look, we have competition coming to this market. We're not scared. We're not going to blink about this. We're going to double down on the things that made us who we are today. And it's through that fight that we will sustain this onslaught of competition.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's perfect. Amazing.
Right. It's just, but sometimes it's so easy to fall into that dark place.
Totally.
Rather than just saying, looking in the mirror. Once again, you got to believe in yourself first.
Yeah.
So important.
Hi there, Ecom Masters. Mike Weiss here again with a friendly reminder that you've unlocked access to our exclusive podcast-only training on how to create your own supplement, CBD, pet, or skincare brand in just minutes, where we're going to break down from A to Z exactly how to put your own design on top-selling products and start selling in just minutes. It's incredible. Now, the principles that you're going to learn are exactly the same principles that we've used with our customers who did over $2 billion. That's right, with a B, $2 billion in sales last year alone. You cannot afford not to take me up on this free training. So to get immediate 100% complimentary access, all you got to do is go to dropified.com/podcast-special, or you can just click the link below in the show notes. I will see you soon. And you know, it's funny because even to people listening that maybe are at the beginning stages, like, well, he owns a restaurant. Like, I would give my eye teeth to own a restaurant and be where he is. And it's like, it's perspective, right? It's like, do you know that the same fears that you have right now about your life, this person has in their life? And guess what? The $100 million or the multi-billion-dollar person, they have that same level of fear that tries to knock on their door every single day. It's your choice if you're going to open it or not, right? And what we're trying to teach you right now is don't open the damn door, right? And because that thing is not going to hold you anymore. There's something else that holds you. And that is, that is belief in yourself. That's confidence, and that's grit. And now the voice, the gentle whisper of the dark. And you're going to say, I know you, and I'm not going to let you in, and I'm going to keep moving on.
And here's another one, Mike, on people that want to, where they're starting with nothing. Okay. Yeah. They start with nothing and they say, that's easy for you to say, you've got all this and I have this.
Yeah.
So there's a guy that I've known for about 10 years, but I really have the utmost respect for him because 35 years ago, he took a job at an auto repair kind of dent shop, okay, collision type shop. And he didn't have any money, but he went into the place, he applied for a job because it was something he was really passionate about. He stayed there. And now he was such a great employee to this place. He now owns it. Now the owner is retired, and he turned around and he offered him to buy the business on a contract for deed. So he self-financed for him. So wow. There are thousands of narratives that fall in that line.
Totally.
So just sometimes if you think that you don't have an opportunity, I tell you what I love. I love it when people come to me and they say, hey, Peter, I've been passionate about the fitness space. I would love to come and work for you, and I'll work for free.
Love it.
Okay. I will show you. I'll work for you for a month for free. And if you think that I can bring value to your company, all I ask is that you hire me and you give me a fair wage. Well, here's the reality. You can't coach grit.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, totally.
You can't coach it. So when people come up to me, I'm a little bit of a cowboy at heart. So when I hear that, I just want to say, I almost want to say, you know what, screw it, you're hired. Yeah. Just because you got so much fire, I just have so much passion for the person you are, because now I know you're coachable. And if you're coachable, I can do anything for you, which is just such an important thing. Just don't underestimate yourself. If you're going to be passionate about something, then just create a window for yourself. And that window sometimes means, do something profound. I work for you for free for a month, which is why earlier in our conversation today, Mike, we talked about before you pivot, make sure you have some money in savings.
That's right.
Because you may have to weather a storm. You can't do that if you don't have some dry powder.
It's totally. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And actually, you know what I would even say, just as and again, I don't actually know Angela, but I was very inspired by this book just because we keep saying the word grit. If you don't know what grit is, I would highly encourage you. There's a great book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and it actually explores the psychology of and the development of this word grit. What is it and how does it come from? And it's really quite something. It brings it into the Marines and what it takes to get in there, and how do they define grit through that, and they bring it into other, they bring it into business, they bring it into personal day-to-day lives. Anyway, I don't know if you ever read it, Peter, but it's quite something. Angela does a really great work. But
I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah, great. Dude, if you haven't read it, you'll love it. It is an amazing book. Anyway, Angela, if you're listening, you're welcome. But anyway.
And that's a great, I love the word grit because everything about it just makes sense. And it's not just a term for men, it's men and women.
Totally.
I mean, I've worked with some great people. And I just want to preface that as well, that, entrepreneur and success, it's not gender specific.
No.
It's not gender
Yeah.
specific. Literally, I mean, there's as much opportunity out there for women as there is men, vice versa.
Absolutely. So I want to tie up point two, and then I want to get into the folks that have actually, they're like you. You know what? They've had a business running for a good long while, and we've talked about a few different examples of how to actually exit properly, so that you can have something and leave and give it to someone that is going to manage it properly. What do you look for? But before we get to that side of it, because I know there's going to be some people that are there, and I know it's a huge buzz thing right now on how to buy up businesses and how can you be an investor and how can you, acquisitions and everything that you've been looking at, and been kind of talking about in sparsely throughout. But we'll get there. To tie off this one, so step one, believe in yourself. And that's for the person just kind of getting started. Make sure that you have the right stuff at the very beginning, which means get your life aligned, get rid of the bad things, get a plan in place, and make sure everything that goes into that plan. If you don't know what needs to go into that plan, you reach out to folks like Peter, or you find a mentor, you find a coach that is in the space that you want to get into. You go seek out counseling, anything to try and get your mind just flipped to say, I want to be like this person. Get the North Star and say, okay, what is it going to take to get there? And get that plan in place, and then just stay executed on that plan. You do that, then you're going to be able to get to the step two, which is you would have seen through a lot of hours, like we said, blood, sweat, and tears, because it's definitely not easy, but it is 100% worth it instead of sitting in a dark hole until you're 50, 60, doing the same thing every single day that you hate doing. This is the pivot. Now, step two, you're going to look at, you have something that is able to keep the lights on, that's, put food on your table, keep a roof over your head, but you want to take it to the next level, right? And so in order to scale, before you scale, you want to make sure that you've listened to your customers, which you should have been doing all along. But this is the time where even before you think about the money and everything else that's going to take to get into it, you're going to figure out what is it that your customers love, what don't they love. Make sure you get to that secret recipe. Once you have that secret recipe, like Peter said, scale to scale, figure out, actually one thing that's really cool is once you identify what people love and maybe what they don't love, not necessarily about your product, but just in the space, and maybe a problem that you are bringing a solution to with maybe your approach or your brand, you're going to start recognizing that they're not the only people that feel that. So then it's going to be a lot easier to, almost like the litmus test of going around, in different markets, in different states, in different countries. And you can start seeing that actually has a very similar litmus test to maybe other places. And that's what's going to help you identify where to go. So now you have the answer of what you need to do, how you need to do it, but then also where you need to go and test it. And like you heard from Peter, he went into small, tiny town market, he went into a mid-market, and he went into a big market. And because the litmus test was the same all the way through, is he wasn't looking at how big the gym needed to be. He wasn't looking at how fancy or shiny everything was. It was something different. It's what his customers were asking for, and he brought that in all three of those markets. So once you have that, then you want to make sure that you're looking at the financials and making sure that you're looking at what can I actually, what can I do that's fiscally responsible? And you do that by managing your growth and managing your scale, not just saying, sure, we'll turn on all the buttons. No, you got to manage it, and you got to start maybe meticulously, but get to a point where you actually have a nice system, a nice flow going into it. And that way, where your markets are, then you can say, great, this is the research that has to go into it. After that, then this is what we're going to start with. And once you have that system in place, which really is no different than what you did in step one, is you got a plan, you followed that plan, you execute that plan. But it sounds like then, Peter, this has to eventually move away from a one-person operation to, you got to bring in folks that can help you take some of that load off so that your attention, your time can go to the right places in order to continue with this scale and this growth management, which you've alluded to as well, which is great. Now that have we gotten to step one, step two, now you're nearing this point where, you are actually running a pretty solid business right now. You have a number of different products or brands or locations or franchises, whatever it is that your business is, but you're in a place where you're pretty sweet. And you know what? You might be thinking, I have just invested so much of my time and life into this right now. To be honest, I don't want to like fold it or sell it necessarily, but I'd like to think about maybe an exit. And because I maybe want to try something a little bit different, and I can't be in the day-to-day of this anymore. So Peter, can we talk about that phase, which I know is a dream for a lot of people, but for some people it's an instant reality because they're looking for how to do that, but they just don't know how, or they don't know the right steps of doing that. Can I what was your train of thought when you're doing that?
Well, when I'm talking to people today, since I've started consulting, I don't look at any business plan, or I don't accept a business plan as complete without the exit strategy in it.
Interesting.
Okay, because the exit. Now, as a rule of thumb, as an entrepreneur, the biggest mistake you can make is push your business to the crescendo and then ride it like a toboggan down the other side.
Right.
That's every entrepreneur's nightmare. Mm-hmm. So just, I can tell you, as an entrepreneur, you owe it to yourself to take some chips off the table at the appropriate time. And once again, I'll use Lyft Brands as an example, which is my own firsthand experience. When I started the company, I started it with my own money. I didn't have any partners. The reason being, I had the capital. People have different circumstances. Sometimes they get loans, or they have to get friends and family to get involved. I didn't have to do that because I'd spent the 20 years previous squirreling away $3 million. Mm-hmm. I started Snap Fitness with about 300,000 cash. Okay. And that's how I started the business. I knew at some point I wanted to take some chips off the table. And believe me, as I started to get growth and momentum, there was no shortage of people calling, wanting to invest in the company.
Sure.
I didn't need their capital because I was spinning off cash every month, mm-hmm. and I was reinvesting that cash into my infrastructure.
Very smart.
But when I got to about 5 million of EBITDA,
mm-hmm.
that's when I said, this is a good time for me to take some chips off the table. Now, at the time, I had about 300 locations. I was doing about 5 million of EBITDA, and I traded at a 20-time multiple. So my company was valued at $100 million. Now, I sold 40% of my company. And why 40% and not 60%? Because I wanted to take enough chips off the table to make it meaningful, but I still wanted to maintain control of my company. And I also wanted to leave enough room, so I left 9% in the event I was ever going to need to raise some capital of the unforeseen.
Sure.
So I sold 40% for 47 million. Now, at that time in my life, think about it, my life was changed forever at that point.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, 3 million is a lot of money, but 3 million and 47 million is entirely different. So
that's right.
I knew my life was never going to be the same. At that point, I continued. So now I had a private equity partner. Mm-hmm. They were a great partner. They knew that they were a minority partner, and they just stayed out of the way. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because they knew that the person they bet on, which was, in this case was me, mm-hmm. they knew that I was inspired and motivated to grow my company. Why? Because I own the largest shares of the company.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So our interests were aligned. I grew it from 5 million of EBITDA to 20 million of EBITDA. Wow. And I did that over the next 6 years. And then I sold another chunk. And this is an important lesson for all your listeners. Mm-hmm. I didn't sell enough. I sold about 20% of my equity for about the same amount of money as I sold the first time. Okay. But so now, here I sit, I own 40% of the company, but what did I give up? I gave up control.
Right.
Big point.
Yes.
Okay. Now I have a new private equity partner. I gave up control of the company, even though, hey, Peter, you're still running the company. You're still making the day-to-day, et cetera, et cetera. Look, people can say anything they want, but the reality of it is when the music stops at any point in time, they can say, hey, look, we're changing directions. Here's what we're doing. Yeah. Okay. That can happen. But for me, I wish that I had sold another 40 or 50% when I got out. Yeah. Okay. Now, that's just for me because that's just how I would do it moving forward. Why? Because I have perspective. Now, mm-hmm. keep in mind, hey, look, I pulled out a ton of money out of my company that I started. So it doesn't make any difference. It's not going to affect my life one bit, but just from a standpoint of being a perfectionist and having perfect execution,
Yeah.
a perfect execution as it relates to your exit.
Yeah.
So now I'm sitting here with about 30% equity of a company that I no longer run. Okay. I sit on the board, but at the end of the day, my vote doesn't even really count because the other group owns the shares. So anyway, that's the proper exit. Take some chips off the table where it's going to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And then continue to grow and drive your company. But when you take that second bite of the apple, that second exit, then sell a portion, leave 10 or 20% in the company.
Right.
And especially if you still want to run the company, if you still want to run it, leave 10 or 20% in there and see where it goes. Right. But don't leave 40% in the company and hope that somebody else is going to run it like you ran it.
Right.
You're leaving yourself exposed.
Totally. Yeah. That's brilliant, because if you think about it, if you were to, because especially if you sold the 20 for the same that you sold for the 40, if you were just to get the full, like if you were to sell, like you said, another 40 to 50 and just kind of maintain 10 to 20, then not only are you getting a bigger chunk, for your cash, because now your EBITDA is 4x, but now you actually get to sit back a little bit. You can be thankful for the fact that your company is growing and it's thriving. You get a little bit more capital that you can then look at putting into other ventures, which, I mean, similar to what you said, 3 million of 47. Well, you know what, even if you were to say 2x or 3x your second sale, I mean, an extra 150 million is can do a lot more for you than 50. Not that people are normally thinking like that, when they're just getting started, but when you're in the end and you're looking at how can I actually make bigger waves, so I'm not just having to throw a pebble in the pond and actually continue making the wave where I can actually get a good splash, right?
Yeah, and I actually, for me, the second I pulled out close to 100 million out of my company before I stepped away. So it is as I said earlier, it's nothing about it is life changing. I'm just looking at it through the lens of perfect execution, right?
Yeah.
And here's the other side of it too. When you think someday you want to try something else, along that journey, think about, like right now, I'm very diversified, but the only things I'm diversified in are things that I really have passionate about. Now, of course, through the 10-year of running my company, I invested a lot in real estate and whatnot. Sure. So I've got that where I've got great cash flow away from my company privately. But I have a lodge in the Serengeti, a 5-star lodge in the Serengeti. Why do I do that? Because I love it. Yeah. I have a music festival in Minnesota, a 3-day music festival that I go back to in the summer months. Why? Because I love it. So now, even though I've built a life on changing lives within the health and wellness space, I look at the next 50 years of my life that I'm going to be changing lives by putting smiles on people's faces and really trying to make a difference where I can in that light. So everything that I'm trying to do, I'm trying to make sure that I'm hopefully a beam of light for people, that I can bring hope. If they feel stuck, I can help get them squared off and kind of pointed in the right direction. That's what lights my fire today. It's not really so much about making money anymore. It's about, making dreams and helping other people live their dream, if that's possible.
I love that. And, if I could just put a few more bumpers on that one. I think it's important for folks to know that guys, money, especially for those that are getting started or the people that are on step 2, right? And by the way, I just want to just tell everyone that's still listening. I mean, this one caught away on us, but there's so much gold in here, guys. And I really hope you go back and you re-listen. You've taken notes. You even dive into Peter's story, because I know that he's definitely not shy about sharing. Even the very milestones that he had to create out there, because that's exactly the point. It's not, hey, brag, and look at my story. It's saying, I want you to experience what I've experienced. I want you to go through the steps as I've gone through them. If anything, I'm trying to create almost a roadmap, although it's very hard to do that for all businesses, but I want to create at least an introspective roadmap for you so that you can reach this moment of self-actualization, almost, if you're going to, pull from psychology. But it's like, if you can reach that element of self-actualization, then actually there's actually nothing, a house, car, money, all of it actually is utterly, meaningless almost. If you even look in, even in the Bible, like when you have Solomon, who literally had more than anybody else ever. That guy was the richest guy ever. And yet ultimately he had everything, and he comes down to, it was everything. All of these things were utterly meaningless, right? Yeah. There's something more, and that is saying, I want to pass on. And I think that this is almost inherent in humanity, that we want to pass on knowledge. We want to pass on love. We want to pass on, value, and in a way that maybe we wish that we had it when we were younger, or maybe in different way that we would have received or wanted to receive it. But it's not to hold people's hands necessarily. It's to say you are valuable, and don't let anyone tell you differently. And the fact that your position, it just, if anything, it just gives you a platform that allows you to speak that in a way that people might hear that. And that's what my hope is. And even just people listening to this and to any other episode that we do, there's tangible things that you need to take away from this. And those are things that you've grabbed. But at the end of it, it's not to covet or desire Peter and everything that he has. It's to learn from him. If anything, it's to learn from what he didn't do right, and how he had to pivot, how he had to assess, how he had to pivot, and actually learn the learning that happened. I don't know, Pierre, I don't want to speak out of bounds there, but is that fair?
It's true. Even when I'm speaking, when I'm doing public speaking, I say, look, I'm the least most important person in this room right now. Really, it's not about what I've been able to accomplish, because the accomplishments that I've had have been it's the result of discipline and hard work and sacrifice, commitment, all of those things. And it's truly applicable in every aspect of your life, your business life, your personal life. So all I try to do is say, look, and the only reason I share my story on the front end of coming from a 2-room schoolhouse and quitting college and all these things, I want to just ground it for people to where, look, I did it and you can too. I'm not some little trust fund baby that had everything handed to him. I grew up, very middle class in a small town in the Midwest. It's possible, right? Youngest of 7 kids. So hopefully people can see that and be inspired by it. But, inspiration is only going to take you so far. I want to give people the tools, the mindset before they're waist deep in a business. I want to give you the tools so I don't send you to a gunfight with a slingshot.
That's right.
Right. I want to get you in the right mindset to say, look, you can do it, because believe me, winning early on, it's a mindset, and you're successful before you ever become successful.
I love that.
The only thing standing in your way is time.
Yeah,
really.
That's right. Which, and that's, it is the most valuable resource, right? But it's the nice part, it's a resource that's going to consume one way or the other. So what are you going to do with it?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't matter how much money. I would say we all get 24. You can't buy more and you don't get less. So
that's right.
Use them wisely.
That's good, man. That's good. Awesome, guys. Man, I hope, Peter, it's been so great chatting with you, man. I love hearing your story. And it's funny, after reading it and listening to it and then chatting with you, I cannot believe how much more you went into it this. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate your time here, man. And so thank you. And I hope everyone that's been listening, again, if you missed it and you want to go back, this is a really great episode. And I really hope that you were taking notes throughout, because this is cool. I don't want to leave you there. Again, I wanted to, I was chatting with Peter before, and there's a couple really key pieces in here that I want to buy in. And, for a lot of you, if you're just kind of getting, either whether you're getting started or whether you have your own, businesses or successful brands that are out there, and you want to have a start similar to the narrative that Peter was saying with his start, and with a number of other narratives that people can then we had alluded to a couple of the stories where you're not having to actually buy everything up front. You don't have to buy your first store to get started. You don't have to buy, all your inventory just to get started. You don't have to, you know what I mean? You don't have to have the same financial investment maybe that you're thinking that you need just to get started. At Dropified, we have this amazing bonus gift that we want to give just to our podcast listeners, and especially the ones that were looking at this episode. We want to make the cost of entry, the cost barrier of entry, to become so low that anyone can literally get started, where you can have your own brand, your own labels, your own logos on top selling products. If that's the entry point that you want to get in with e-commerce, we have this amazing plan. And so, Peter, let me ask you though, what I'd like to do is I want to just quickly explain what the offer is. And then I'd love to ask you a question like, if you had this when you were 22, what would you have done with it? If that's all right. So, so what we're going to do at Dropified, we're going to be offering, it's $197 per month. And what this is, it's called the Private Label On Demand Plan. And with it, what you're going to be able to do is, actually, I'll just go ahead and share my screen here so that you guys can see it. What you're going to be able to do is be able to have your own labels, your own logos, your own brands, your own messaging on these top selling in demand supplements, gummies, CBD, pet product, like pet supplements and skincare products, which means that, that these are high quality products that are coming from top selling manufacturers in the United States. But you get to do this with your own labels, your own logos, your own brands, and there's zero upfront inventory costs. Okay, I want to make sure that's 100% clear. You can literally get started for $197 a month. You can put on whatever labels, brands, logos. And again, we're going to control kind of what you can say. You can't say, you know, an amino acid, you know, energy drink can cure blindness or anything. But so there's some controls there. But the whole point is you get to get access to this amazing catalog of in-demand, top-selling, high-quality supplements, zero upfront inventory costs. You will never buy a product or a minimum order quantity from us before you get started. It literally is on demand. So when your client buys it, this will get a fulfillment order through Dropified, and it will go right to your customer. And here's the key: in 1 to 3 business days. So it's an amazing plan. If you want to learn more, click the button below. We go through a full explanation of it. But if you want to get started with your own business, with your own brand, or if you want to add to your existing business with you know, some side products or some complementary products or just another revenue stream, I strongly encourage you to click below, learn more about, you know, what this program is, how we help you. We provide you some great new bonus gifts and templates that we don't offer the public. It's just for podcasts. But let me ask you, Peter, I'll jump off of the screen here. If you want to learn that, by the way, at the end of this episode, just click down below. Yeah. Peter, if you had access to, if someone literally just handed you the keys to their door, and not just the door that you had with your first gym, if they said, Peter, I need you to make this, like, you have the creative and I have the vessel, and I'm going to hand you the keys to this, and then you had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other people do the exact same thing when you were 22, what would you have done with an opportunity, say, like with this, where you can literally put your own brand, your own label, your own logo, and your own spin on that opportunity?
Well, I think that your product, I think it provides a great opportunity, especially as I think about it and the little bit that I've heard about it from you. It opens up a huge opportunity for all the personal trainers out there across the country.
Right? Yeah.
Who have their clientele, who are currently directing them to go. I know many trainers who they're set up on an affiliate program with some of the national brands, and they might sell a $40 jug of protein and they might make $6 on it. Okay, $6 commission. So this is an opportunity, assuming that your products are great quality, that they can go and they can put their own logo on it, creating their own brand that they can spread across to their customer base. Yeah. Which what I love about it, it creates another level of stickiness with my customer. I not only am going to train them, but I want to be able to give them my products. So we create this dependency on one another, and we're just, our relationship becomes so much more meaningful. So that is one. Also, people that might own maybe 1 or 2 gyms, excuse me, 1 or 2 gyms, it gives them an opportunity to carry a supplement line without taking a big position on inventory. So that's the biggest deterrent for a lot of small business owners, is they have to take a position on inventory, and then they have to worry about shrinkage and everything else that comes with it. So I think that you bring a lot of value. I mean, for me, as I was 22, and I think for any of your people out there that are aspiring entrepreneurs, I think the first step is to just kind of get in the game. And this is a chance for you to get into a game where you don't have to bet the farm.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. And you're 100% right. No, and you're 100% right. And You know what, guys, it's, again, I'm not going to talk anymore about it. If you want to look, feel free to go down below. You'll see the link, you'll see the button, learn more. We providing 100% free training on literally what this is, how it works, and get access to it. And like Peter's saying, you can get in the game so much cheaper and so much faster than ever before. Even when I was jumping in, and 35 years ago when Peter was jumping in, no one would be handing opportunities and keys like this. You had to work your ass off for it. And again, we're doing this at the same spirit that Peter has been having this entire interview. And it's just to say, listen, we've gone through this. These are the steps, the milestones that we took, and we want to help create this roadmap for you for success. And it starts with a low cost entry barrier point. And so anyway, so go ahead, click the link below. Peter, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you today. I'm very excited that we get to share this with our listeners. And honestly, man, I'm excited just to continue having future conversations with you. This was a lot of fun, man. And you're excellent. And
I appreciate it, Mike. Hey, can I share for some of your followers? I just appreciate you to follow me on Instagram.
Please, go ahead.
I make it really easy to follow me. It's just Peter_Taunton, TAUNTON. But I share, just hopefully I'm inspiring, and I give you little nuggets of truth as it relates to building an entrepreneurial enterprise. So
absolutely.
I hope that you follow me. I'll follow you back, and we'll just keep communicating. So
actually, we'll do one better here, Peter. Actually, on the page down below, when we're gonna have a nice bio for Peter, you'll read it there, and it'll explain a little of his story. Again, it won't be anything near what you just heard on this episode, so make sure that you don't just go down and read, but you listen to this. But we'll have all where you can follow Peter and you can track. And if you actually want to chat with Peter, we'll give you an opportunity to do that down there as well. So we'll give you all that contact information, all that follow information down there. And yeah, follow me. Amazing story. And it's not done yet. It's not done yet. So yeah, thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, Mike. I appreciate you. Take care.
Take care. Hello again, Ecom Masters. Mike Weiss here again with a big thank you for sticking with us to the end of this episode. I know how valuable your time is, and I want to congratulate you for setting yourself apart from the pack by investing your attention into this podcast. Now, make sure to maximize this time by taking notes while it's still fresh, listening to the episode multiple times if you need to, and implementing what you have learned right away into your own business. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more training and want to learn the step-by-step methodology that you need to build the e-com business of your dreams, I want you to join me for an exclusive invite-only training that I'm only giving specifically for podcast listeners. Now, in it, we're going to share the secrets of what we've used to scale Dropified into the 2019 55 fastest growing company in America. You will not find this information anywhere else, guaranteed. To get immediate 100% free access, all you got to do is go to dropified.com/podcast-special, or just click the link below and in the show notes, and I will see you on the other side.